The story the media is telling you is simple. It's a story of a major geopolitical move in the global chip war. In recent weeks, you've seen the headlines. The Netherlands has just dealt a $10 billion blow to China's semiconductor industry. On September 30th, 2025, the Dutch government took an extraordinary step. It activated a rare Cold War-era law called the Goods Availability Act. With this act, they effectively seized control of Nexperia, a global semiconductor giant. Nexperia is a company valued at over $10 billion, and it is 100% owned by a Chinese tech conglomerate, Wintech Technology. The Dutch government placed the company under state supervision, freezing its assets and removing its management. The official reasons cited were threats to national security and serious governance failures. On the surface, this looks like a straightforward victory for the West's technology containment strategy against China. The Netherlands, a key U.S. ally and home to the critical lithography company ASML, appears to be holding the line. It seems to be another win for Washington in a long and bitter tech war. But that story is only half of the truth. It's the myth, the simple narrative presented for public consumption. The truth, as it often is far more complex and far more damaging. What if I told you the biggest victim of this $10 billion seizure is not in Beijing? What if I told you the immediate victim, the one already feeling the financial pain just weeks later, is the industrial heartland of Europe itself? That victim is Germany. Today, we are not going to rehash the US-China chip war. We are going to analyze how that containment strategy has just backfired, creating a devastating fracture inside the Western alliance. This is the story of how the Netherlands, under immense pressure from the United States, has just pointed a gun at the economic engine of its single largest EU partner. This is the story of the collateral damage that no one is talking about. A story that reveals a deep, uncomfortable truth about the real cost of this geopolitical conflict. And it's a story that begins not with advanced AI chips, but with the boring technology that actually runs your car. The hidden artery, Hamburg's critical role. To understand what is happening, you first have to understand what Nexperia truly is. This is not some new upstart Chinese firm. Nexperia is, in fact, a European legacy. It was born from the Standard Products division of Philips Semiconductors, a Dutch institution with over 60 years of technological heritage. In 2017, it was spun off, and later, over several years, it was fully acquired by China's Wintech Technology. And Wintech bought it for one very specific, very strategic reason: automotive-grade chips. This is the technology China's massive electric vehicle industry desperately needs to secure its supply chain. This brings us to the central question: why is Germany the victim? Because Nexperia, while Dutch in origin and Chinese in ownership, is the silent, beating heart of the German auto industry. Let's look at the facts. Who are Nexperia's biggest clients? They are the giants of German engineering: Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz. Their client list also includes the American giant Tesla, specifically for its Giga Berlin factory. This isn't a minor supplier relationship, it is fundamental. And here's the most critical piece of information, the fact that is almost entirely missing from the headlines. Where is Nexperia's most important manufacturing plant? It's not in China. It's not even in the Netherlands. Nexperia's largest and most critical front-end wafer fabrication plant in Europe is located in Hamburg, Germany. This Hamburg factory is a powerhouse. It is part of a massive European production network for Nexperia that ships tens of billions of components every single year. It is a vital artery pumping the essential electronic components, the blood, directly into Germany's industrial heartland. Now, we need to be clear about what these chips are. The media is obsessed with the chip war over 3 nanometer and 5 nanometer chips. The advanced brains used for AI and supercomputers. The chips that ASML, the Dutch crown jewel, builds machines for. This is not that war. This is the other chip war. The one that is less glamorous but far more critical to your daily life. Nexperia doesn't make the brains. It makes the nervous system. It dominates the global market for mature nodes or legacy chips. These are the boring components, transistors, diodes, and especially MOSFETs, which are power management chips. They are built on older, larger processes from 40 nanometers up to 130 nanometers, and they are completely, totally, non-negotiably essential. You cannot build a modern car without them. An electric vehicle, like a new Volkswagen ID.4 or a Tesla Model Y, uses thousands of these boring chips. The original transcript mentioned about 1,000 Nexperia chips per EV, and that's a conservative estimate. They control everything from your power windows and dashboard lights to your battery management system, your braking, and your safety sensors. And in this critical, high-volume market, Nexperia is king. According to data from Z2 Data and other market analysts, Nexperia holds a dominant global market share, in some cases as high as 40%, for these basic, essential automotive components. So let's put this all together. The world's largest supplier of essential automotive chips has its main European factory located in Germany, where it supplies virtually every single German car manufacturer, and that company has just been seized by the government of the Netherlands. The hidden artery in Hamburg has just been clamped shut. The collateral damage, Germany under fire. This is where the political story ends and the economic reality begins. When the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs invoked its Emergency Act on September 30th, it didn't just target a Chinese owner in Beijing. It paralyzed a German factory. The order explicitly forbids Nexperia's management, the Chinese owners, from adjusting assets, handling intellectual property, or making any significant business changes. What does this mean for the factory in Hamburg? It means operations are thrown into chaos. Long-term contracts cannot be signed. New investments cannot be approved. And most importantly, the reliable flow of chips to German assembly lines is immediately threatened. This is not a theoretical, long-term problem. This is an immediate, five-alarm fire for the German auto industry, and the industry knows it. Within days of the Dutch announcement, the German Association of the Automotive Industry, the VDA, issued a formal public warning. This is the official voice of Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes. The VDA stated, and I quote, that the situation at Nexperia could lead to considerable production restrictions and possibly production stoppages. Production stoppages. Those two words should send a chill down the spine of the entire European economy. The VDA's warning was immediately echoed. The ACEA, the European Automobile Manufacturers Association, expressed deep concern over significant disruptions. The ACEA warned that the existing stockpile of Nexperia chips at auto plants, the buffer, might only last for a few weeks. Weeks, not months. And then, the first domino fell. According to reports from Reuters, Volkswagen was the first to act. The company confirmed it was facing a critical shortage linked directly to the Nexperia situation. VW warned its employees of potential disruptions. And then it officially halted production of its flagship electric model, the ID.4, and its bestseller, the Golf. The assembly lines at Wolfsburg, the largest car factory in the world, were grinding to a halt. Not because of a problem in China, not because of a tsunami in Japan, but because of a political decision made by their next-door neighbor and EU partner, the Netherlands. Think about the sheer insanity of this situation. The German auto industry is already in a fragile state. It is fighting for its life against new EV competitors like Tesla and BYD. It is struggling with the high energy prices caused by the cutoff of Russian gas. And now, at its most vulnerable moment, its own EU ally has just cut off its supply of the most basic, essential components it needs to build cars. The Netherlands claimed this was about national security. But one must ask, whose national security? By crippling a factory on German soil, the Dutch government has directly threatened the economic security of Germany. It has put thousands of German jobs at risk. It has destabilized the most important industry in the largest economy in Europe. This action proves that national security has become the political buzzword of 2025. It's a convenient pretext used by governments to intervene in the market, break contracts, and seize assets, even when it means sacrificing their closest allies. The real motive, Washington's shadow. This brings us to the real question. Why? Why would the Netherlands do this? Why would they risk a massive economic and diplomatic rift with Germany, their most important EU partner? Wintech Technology, the Chinese parent company, has owned Nexperia for 5 years. This isn't a new development. Why act on September 30th, 2025? The answer, as with most major geopolitical events today, is found by looking at the timeline and by following the shadow of Washington. Clue number one, the U.S. Entity List. This entire sequence of events was set in motion late last year. In 2024, Nexperia's parent company, Wintech Technology, was officially added to the U.S. Entity List. This is the same blacklist used against Huawei. It effectively bars American companies from doing business with Wintech. This put Nexperia, its subsidiary, in an impossible position. Clue number two, the ASML connection. For the past 2 years, Washington has been exerting immense, unrelenting diplomatic pressure on the Dutch government. The target, ASML. ASML is the Dutch crown jewel, the only company on Earth that makes the sophisticated EUV lithography machines needed for advanced chips. The U.S. successfully pressured the Netherlands to ban ASML from selling these EUV machines to China. But Washington wasn't satisfied. They then demanded the Dutch also ban the sale of ASML's older technology, the DUV machines, which China was buying in record numbers. This was a painful request. It cost ASML billions in revenue. But the Netherlands, reliant on the U.S. chips for its national security, eventually complied. The Dutch government chose to align itself fully with Washington's containment policy. This is the context for the Nexperia seizure. This was not an independent, isolated action by The Hague. It was the next logical step in their compliance with Washington's strategy. It was a gesture of loyalty. The U.S. wants to strangle every aspect of China's tech industry. Not just high-end AI chips from NVIDIA, not just 5G from Huawei. They want to stop China from securing its supply chain for everything, including the boring automotive chips that Nexperia makes. The Netherlands, having already sacrificed ASML's sales, was politically cornered. They had to pick a side, and they chose Washington, even if it meant throwing their German neighbors and the entire German auto industry under the bus. Let's be very clear. The original Nexperia video you may have seen, the one this analysis is based on, mentioned a $3 billion U.S. subsidy to the Netherlands under the CHIPS Act. Our fact check found this to be incorrect. The U.S. CHIPS Act subsidizes production on U.S. soil. The reality is more complex. This wasn't a simple bribe. It was raw political pressure. The Nexperia seizure exposes the brutal truth of the New World Order. First, the U.S. is pursuing an all-encompassing containment strategy against China. Second, U.S. allies, like the Netherlands, are being forced to comply, regardless of the economic cost to themselves or their partners. And third, other allies, like Germany, who have deep economic ties to both China and the U.S., are being caught in the crossfire. China was the target, but Germany is the collateral damage. Conclusion and resonance loop. The seizure of Nexperia is more than just a $10 billion corporate heist, as the original video's title called it. It is a symptom of a deep and growing fracture within the Western alliance. It proves that the U.S. containment strategy against China has now entered a dangerous new phase, a phase where it is causing direct, severe, self-inflicted harm on America's own allies. Think of what we have just witnessed. One EU nation, the Netherlands, has just disrupted the critical supply chain of another EU nation, Germany, in order to execute the foreign policy of a non-EU nation, the United States. This single act has jeopardized the stability of Europe's most important industry and created a massive political rift between its two most powerful economic partners. The question for the future is, how will Germany respond? How long can Berlin tolerate having its industrial policy dictated by Washington and its supply lines cut by its own EU partners? This isn't just a Dutch-German economic tension. It is a preview of the painful choices all Western nations will have to make as this U.S.-China conflict intensifies. And while this move seems to target China, the damage to Germany's auto sector is far more immediate and far more certain. In fact, this fight over automotive chips is just one part of a much larger, hidden conflict. We'll explore that in our next video. The other chip war, how China is quietly winning the race for the chips that run your car. But this leaves us with a final critical question. As the US continues to pressure its allies to contain China, who do you think will ultimately pay the higher economic price? China or America's own partners, like Germany? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.